The room went completely silent when the millionaire pointed at his maid and said the words nobody expected to hear, "I need a wife now. Come with me." She stood frozen beside the dining table, still holding a silver tray in her trembling hands. Around them, wealthy guests stared as if she had suddenly become invisible and important at the same time. But what they didn't know was that this wasn't a love story that began with flowers, music, or a romantic proposal. It began with desperation, humiliation, and one man who had forgotten what kindness felt like. And the woman he was asking to pretend to be his wife was about to change his life in a way money never could. Before we begin, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the idea that one good heart can change another, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, leave a comment, and subscribe to Kindness Corner. Your support helps us bring more stories like this to people who believe that compassion still matters. For years, Elena had learned how to move quietly. At 31, she knew how to walk through a mansion without making a sound, how to serve dinner without interrupting a conversation, and how to disappear whenever wealthy people started discussing things they believed poor people shouldn't hear. She worked as a live-in maid for Adrian Vale, a 42-year-old billionaire whose name appeared regularly in business magazines. His company owned hotels, apartment buildings, restaurants, and several technology investments. To the world, Adrian had everything. To Elena, he looked like a man who had everything except peace. Elena had taken the job 2 years earlier after losing almost everything. Her father had died unexpectedly, leaving behind medical bills and a small house that the bank eventually took because the payments had fallen behind. Her younger brother, Matteo, had a heart condition that required expensive treatment, and Elena had become the only person he could depend on. She worked 12-hour days, sometimes more, sending nearly every spare dollar home. She never complained because complaining didn't pay hospital bills. She simply worked, saved, and hoped that one day life would become gentler. Adrian barely noticed her during those first months. He saw the maid, not the woman. To him, she was another employee among gardeners, drivers, cooks, and security guards. He rarely said more than a few words to her. Elena didn't mind. In fact, she preferred it. Being unnoticed was safer than being judged. But Adrian had his own wounds. 5 years earlier, his fiancée, Claire, had left him just weeks before their wedding. She had chosen another man, someone she believed could give her a better social life and a more exciting future. Adrian never recovered completely. Instead of allowing himself to grieve, he buried himself in business. He became colder, more demanding, and increasingly isolated. His mother worried about him, but Adrian rejected every attempt to interfere with his life. Then came the problem that changed everything. Adrian's grandfather, the man who had built the foundation of the family fortune, had been diagnosed with a serious illness. The old man knew he did not have much time left, and before his condition worsened, he made one final demand. Adrian was expected to attend the family's annual charity gala with a wife or serious partner. If he arrived alone again, his grandfather threatened to transfer a large portion of the family trust into a foundation, preventing Adrian from controlling it. Adrian considered the demand ridiculous. He could buy companies, buildings, airplanes, and entire neighborhoods, but he couldn't buy the approval of one stubborn old man. That evening, the mansion was filled with preparations for the gala. Elena was arranging glasses in the dining room when Adrian entered with his phone pressed against his ear. His expression was tense. He ended the call and stood silently for several seconds. Then he looked directly at Elena. She immediately lowered her eyes and continued working. Adrian walked toward her and said that he needed a favor. Elena assumed he wanted something cleaned or prepared. Instead, his next words made the glass in her hand nearly slip from her fingers. "I need a wife now. Come with me." Elena stared at him, convinced she had misunderstood. Adrian explained the situation quickly. His grandfather wanted him married, or at least publicly committed, before the gala ended. Adrian needed someone trustworthy who would agree to pretend to be his wife for one evening. He offered Elena an amount of money that was more than she earned in several years. For a moment, Elena thought about Mateo's hospital bills. She thought about the medication he needed, the surgery the doctors had recommended, and the fear she carried every time her phone rang from the hospital. But then she looked at Adrian. She saw no romance in his eyes. No affection. No respect. Only desperation. Elena quietly placed the tray down. Then she did something Adrian never expected. She refused. She told him that she was poor, but she wasn't for sale. Adrian's face changed. He had expected hesitation, maybe negotiation, but not rejection. He asked why she would refuse money that could change her life. Elena answered that money could pay for medicine, but it couldn't buy back her dignity. Then she turned around and walked away. Adrian remained standing in the hallway, stunned. For the first time in years, someone had told him no without fear. The next morning, Adrian discovered something else. Elena had not told anyone about his strange proposal. She didn't gossip with the other employees. She didn't use the situation to embarrass him. She simply returned to work as if nothing had happened. That bothered him more than her refusal. He began noticing things he had ignored for years. He noticed Elena leaving food untouched because she was saving money. He noticed her working while quietly talking to her brother on the phone during breaks. He noticed that whenever one of the younger employees made a mistake, Elena took responsibility instead of humiliating them. He noticed that she always left a small bowl of water outside for a stray dog that wandered near the property. Then one afternoon, Adrian found Elena sitting alone in the kitchen, crying silently while holding a hospital bill. She quickly wiped her face when she realized he was there. He asked what had happened. She initially refused to answer, but eventually admitted that Mateo's condition had worsened. The hospital had postponed his treatment because she couldn't pay the required deposit. Adrian listened without interrupting. Then he asked how much she needed. Elena immediately shook her head. She reminded him that she had refused his money. Adrian told her that this wasn't a business deal. It was help. She still refused. That was the moment something changed inside him. For most of his life, Adrian had believed that people always wanted something from him. Elena was the first person who seemed determined not to owe him anything. That night, Adrian quietly contacted the hospital and paid Mateo's medical expenses anonymously. When Elena discovered what had happened, she confronted him. She was angry because she didn't want charity. Adrian simply told her that sometimes accepting help wasn't weakness. Sometimes it was allowing another human being to do something good. Elena didn't know what to say. The gala arrived 3 days later. Adrian still needed a partner, but this time he didn't ask Elena to pretend to be his wife because of his grandfather's money. He asked her because he wanted her beside him. He promised that she could leave whenever she wanted and that there would be no contract, no payment, and no obligation. Elena reluctantly agreed to attend. When she walked downstairs that evening, the mansion seemed to stop breathing. She wasn't wearing expensive diamonds. She didn't have a designer dress. She wore a simple dark blue gown Adrian's sister had helped her choose. But there was something about the way she carried herself that made people look twice. Adrian stood at the bottom of the staircase. For the first time, he didn't see a maid. He saw Elena. And something in his expression made her heart beat faster. At the gala, whispers followed them everywhere. Some guests laughed behind their hands. Others openly questioned Adrian's decision. One woman even asked Elena whether she had been hired for the evening. Elena felt the humiliation burning through her. She started to walk away. Adrian stopped her. Instead of defending himself, he turned toward the entire room. He announced that Elena had been the only person in his life who had ever refused his money and still treated him like a human being. He told them that she had helped his employees, cared for strangers, and stood beside him when she had every reason to walk away. Then he admitted something nobody expected. He said that the woman he had once asked to pretend to be his wife had become the only woman he could imagine building a real life with. The room fell silent. Elena stared at him with tears in her eyes. But she didn't answer immediately. She walked toward Adrian and quietly told him that if he wanted her in his life, it couldn't be because she saved him from his grandfather, his family, or his loneliness. It had to be because he loved her. Adrian nodded. He told her that he was still learning what love meant, but he knew one thing for certain: when she wasn't around, the mansion felt empty. Those words broke through the walls Elena had built around her heart. She took his hand. Not because he was rich. Not because he could pay her brother's bills. Not because he had promised her a beautiful life. She took his hand because, for the first time, Adrian wasn't asking her to become something for him. He was asking her to be herself. Months passed. Matteo received his treatment and slowly recovered. Elena no longer worked as a maid. Adrian offered her a position managing the charitable foundation he created in honor of his grandfather. She accepted only after insisting that she would earn her salary and that every donation would be carefully accounted for. Adrian changed too. He began visiting hospitals without cameras. He started funding scholarships for employees' children. He learned the names of people who worked in his buildings. He even began eating dinner with his staff once a week, something that would have been unimaginable before Elena entered his life. Their relationship didn't become perfect overnight. They argued. They misunderstood each other. Sometimes Elena worried that Adrian would return to the cold man he used to be, and sometimes Adrian feared that Elena would eventually realize she deserved someone less complicated. But they kept choosing each other. 1 year after that unforgettable gala, Adrian took Elena back to the same ballroom. This time there were no contracts. No family pressure. No pretending. He got down on one knee in front of everyone and asked her to become his wife for real. Elena cried before she could answer. Then she smiled and said yes. The millionaire who once believed a wife could be purchased had finally learned that love was the one thing money could never command. And the maid he barely noticed had taught him the greatest lesson of his life: a person's value is never measured by the clothes they wear, the house they live in, or the money in their bank account. Sometimes the poorest person in the room carries the richest heart. If this story touched your heart, please like the video, share it with someone who believes people deserve second chances, and subscribe to Kindness Corner. Your support helps these stories reach more hearts and reminds us that kindness can appear in the most unexpected places. And before we end, I have one special request. Comment: kindness changes everything, if you believe that one act of compassion can change a person's entire life. Because sometimes, the person standing quietly in the corner of the room is not waiting to be rescued. Sometimes, they are the one who will save everyone else. And sometimes, the greatest love story begins when two people stop seeing each other as rich and poor, employer and employee, powerful and powerless, and simply see two human beings who